Hey everyone, Max at 343 Labs here. Today I'd like to show you a clip by one of our instructors, John Selway, where he demonstrates experimental sound design using a Max for Live granular looping device. Now this clip is taken from 343 TV, which airs multiple times per week right here on our YouTube channel. If you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe below, and let's get into it.
So I've got this kind of chill groove going on. A little bit kind of old school IDM. It's reminding me of stuff I heard in the 90s on like early Warp artificial intelligence compilations, that kind of thing. So what's happening with the beats here is I'm using... Right, this started as a preset I played around with, but this one is... Let's go and look into the pack. This is the Bouncy Notes MIDI device. Let's solo the beats. So all of those different balls are bouncing and creating variations on my beat. I've got a simple beat in here. Let's turn the Bouncy Notes off. So that's what I started with. Actually, I started with less. Originally, I just had one kick and one snare. Actually, let's do this. Let's get rid of the hi-hat, and it sounds a little bit less busy now. It'll be easier to hear what's going on. Actually, no snare, just the kick. So when I turn on this bouncing notes, it's going to pass through that kick, but it's also going to add notes and create variations and create new rhythms in real time. So every time I play a kick drum, it's kind of reacting and throwing out another note. And depending on the speed and the gravity and the mass, it'll bounce farther or closer or higher or lower, and I can change that. I can adjust the effect of the gravity. I have it quantized. So over here on the right side, you have a quantized amount. I'm going to turn that off. Now it's free. It's going only by a number of milliseconds, I would guess. And so you can create, if you want to create pseudo-random, out-of-time kind of things, this is really great for that. In this case, though, I don't want to be that organic. I'm going to put the quantize back on. Let's increase the speed a little bit. And lower the gravity. So you're seeing the balls kind of occasionally travel farther and faster. If I remove the gravity a lot, actually, let's just bring it down almost to zero. Now you see those balls moving really, really slowly. When the mass is light, you can see like they're lighter, they're flying up in the air more and moving around like crazy. It's sort of making it even more erratic and random. But if I increase the mass, they're bigger and heavier, right? So even though the gravity's low, they're going to start falling down a little bit more. Let's increase the gravity. So you'll see them kind of dying away more quickly. You're going to get less variation. All right, so this is also kind of an XY axis thing, and you have horizontal and vertical. Right now, the horizontal is set to bounce, and the vertical is set to random. So right now, it's, depending on its motion, you're going to hear it either bounce or wrap or delete. So you can actually set it to like delete a note that's playing. All right. Let's see what happens if I bounce on both. So you're going to hear more doubles. I'm slowing the speed, so you're going to have more time to hear. It'll bounce for longer. you know, because it's quantized to 16th notes, and you know, this type of sort of style of beat I'm doing works well with these kind of rhythms. It's continuing to sound musical. It's constantly evolving, maybe a little too much, but it's filling in a lot of space. And you know, you've seen other types of randomizing, and you know, Live 11 has a way of randomizing whether a note plays or not, or randomizing velocity in a clip. This is kind of giving you kind of like a randomizing thing, but I like how musical it is, and you can, depending on how you adjust it, come up with something that isn't just randomly spitting out whatever, but is musically relevant to your idea, to your beat, to your melody, whatever it is. Now let's see what happens. Right now I've got you have a number of voices, the number of simultaneous balls bouncing around. If I go down to 1, you're going to hear only one other sound playing besides the kick at a time. If I go up to 32, it could get a little crazy, depending on the settings. Another good thing we have control over is friction. So a lower friction, it will also bounce less, right? The friction will, every time it hits, it'll slow down a little bit more. So that's with a high friction. You can see it just dies off really quickly. With a low friction, it'll just keep bouncing all over the place. Let's go back to random. So we're going to hear less doubling and a little more variation between multiple different notes. All right. I also have the direction randomized, so it'll go forward and backwards randomly. If I turn that off, you can see they're always starting on the left and going right. And that's also creating a more, I don't know, the rhythm is staying tighter. It's not changing it as much. Actually, it's not hardly changing it at all. I kind of like that. I can then give a little bit of percentage of randomization to direction, and it will occasionally spit out farther or go in the opposite direction. Future Class DMB Official says you could just let it randomize a super long loop and pick out the best sounding parts. That is absolutely right. So a lot of times what I'll do when I'm working with devices that generate random stuff is re-record the MIDI if it's MIDI, or resample the audio if it's an audio effect, and then go back and capture that and then go back and edit out the parts that I want to use. So in this case, in Ableton Live, insert MIDI track, MIDI from, I'm going to choose the kit that has the device on it, and it's set to post effect, so I know it's going to capture the output of that MIDI, or it should anyway. If I arm the track, you should see incoming MIDI notes following what we hear. Let's see if that works. Yep. So we're getting all of that random, semi-random, organic physics-inspired generation, MIDI generation. And then I can go back and, you know, just find the loop that I like, or find the sections that I like. So, nice suggestion. Enigmatic Onion says, I feel like we're listening to an intensely complex randomized CV rack, but all in the box. Well, that's the thing with this stuff, is we're starting to think about making music with more than just playing a MIDI keyboard or drawing in notes. We're using complex sequencing to generate complex modulation, to generate musical ideas that are, more like what people are used to doing, say, with your modular rack, that kind of thing, plugging one thing into another and seeing what happens. So that's kind of what we're exploring here. And yes, you could make bass lines with it. In fact, I have kind of a bass line / melody going on over here. This is also using bouncy notes. So let's look at my MIDI is doing. Really simple, just one note every bar, creating doing a simple progression. All right, so now let's hear that again and listen to what Bouncy Notes is doing to it. So it's doing just the same as what the drums were doing. It's adding notes to what I'm playing. I have them quantized to 16 notes again, and I played around with the speed and the gravity and the mass. Another thing I'm doing here, which is pretty cool about this, and actually you can do this on some of these other devices, is you can choose parts of this XY sort of where things are blocked. So if let's say I don't want too many high notes, I've got a block drawn in here that occasionally, depending on where the notes start, will let through the balls into the higher octaves, but mostly it's keeping them on the lower octave where I want my bass to live. So I have one down here that I drew that's keeping most of the notes that are originating in the lower octave from going to the right. And then I have one that I did horizontally that blocks notes that start high from going down too much, right? If I get rid of those, you can double click on them, and now they're going to be just all over the place all the time. And you'll hear more variation, more notes being created. Monist Impulse. I'd be interested in seeing some exploration of parameter automation on these devices for transitions. Definitely. It's complex enough already. Once you start modulating these things from external sources, you could get really deep. Maybe we'll look at some of that with the other devices that we get into on the next example. Anyway, I'm going to put these blocks back in here. And sometimes it plays a couple low notes that I felt were a little bit too low. So I'm going to just cover my lowest notes here. So that should avoid like the lowest notes, which sound a little muddy sometimes.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget 343 TV goes live right here on our YouTube channel several times per week. And if you want to learn more about music production or just want to join our community, you can find more information at 343labs.com or 343labs.de for our German website. See you next time.